What if everything you learned about the American Civil War was only half the story? You've probably heard this before. The North versus the South, blue uniforms against gray, Abraham Lincoln. The Confederacy, the end of slavery. But that's only the beginning, because hidden beneath the famous battles are stories so unbelievable, they almost sound fictional. More American soldiers died in this war than in World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and Korea combined. Most of them were never killed by bullets. One Civil War pension was still being paid in 2020. The assassination of President Lincoln was never supposed to stop with Lincoln. 3 of America's highest leaders were marked for death on the very same night. And as the Confederacy collapsed, a fortune in gold simply disappeared. No one has ever found it. This is the most documented war in American history. Millions of letters, thousands of photographs, countless eyewitness accounts, and yet, more than 160 years later, it still divides families, politicians, historians, and ordinary Americans. Because this wasn't just a war over land or power, it became a battle over the very meaning of America itself. Tonight, we're separating fact from myth, because the real story is far more shocking than anything most textbooks ever dared to print. Welcome to Hidden America TV. Chapter 1, What was the Civil War really about? Ask 10 people why the Civil War happened, and you'll probably hear 10 different answers. Some will say states' rights. Others will say taxes, economics, politics, or simply the North and South had grown too different. But here's something many people never do. Instead of asking modern commentators, let's ask the people who actually started the war, because they left us their answers in writing. When Southern states announced they were leaving the United States, they published official declarations explaining exactly why, and those documents still exist today. Mississippi didn't hide its reason. It declared, "Our position is thoroughly identified with the institution of slavery." Georgia warned that the federal government threatened slavery. Texas described slavery as beneficial and essential to its society. Then came one of the most revealing speeches in American history. Confederate Vice President Alexander Stephens stood before a crowd and proudly explained what the new Confederate nation was built upon. He called slavery its cornerstone. He argued that black Americans were not equal to white Americans, and said the Confederacy was founded on that belief. These weren't secret documents. They weren't written decades later. They weren't created by the Union. These were official statements made by Confederate leaders before the first major battles had even begun. Yet today, many Americans still believe the war had little or nothing to do with slavery. How did that happen? The answer begins after the war ended. Chapter 2, The Myth That Rewrote History. When the Confederacy surrendered, the fighting stopped. But another battle quietly began, a battle over memory. Former Confederate leaders knew they had lost the war, but they believed they could still shape how future generations remembered it. So a new story slowly appeared. It became known as the Lost Cause. According to this version of history, the Confederacy hadn't fought for slavery. Instead, it supposedly fought for honor, for states' rights, for Southern tradition, for constitutional freedom. It was a comforting story, but historians now know it ignored the Confederacy's own words. Over the next several decades, organizations promoted this new version of history. School textbooks repeated it. Public speeches celebrated it. Children grew up believing it. Even many Confederate monuments were not built immediately after the Civil War. A large number appeared decades later, during periods when racial equality was being challenged, including the early 1900s and during the Civil Rights Movement. They weren't only memorials. They also sent political messages. History can be shaped not only by facts, but by whoever tells the story. That's why reading original documents matters, because they allow us to hear voices without someone rewriting them. And once you begin reading those original records, the Civil War becomes far more complex and far more human than simple heroes and villains, because regardless of which side they fought on, hundreds of thousands of ordinary Americans would soon experience suffering on a scale the nation had never imagined. And the deadliest enemy they faced wasn't always standing across the battlefield. Sometimes it was invisible. Chapter 3. The War That Killed a Nation. Imagine waking up one morning and learning that nearly every family in your town has lost someone. A father, a son, a brother, a husband. That was America during the Civil War. It remains the deadliest conflict in American history. For generations, historians believed around 620,000 soldiers died. But modern research suggests the true number may have been far higher, perhaps 750,000, even 850,000. Think about that. More Americans died in the Civil War than in the American Revolution, World War I, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Combined, the numbers are almost impossible to imagine. Entire towns lost a generation of young men. Some communities never recovered. But here's the part that surprises almost everyone. Most soldiers were never killed by enemy bullets. Their greatest enemy couldn't be seen. Disease, typhoid, dysentery, pneumonia, smallpox, infected wounds. Thousands survived the battlefield, only to die days later. Inside overcrowded hospitals, doctors worked around the clock, but medicine in the 1860s was painfully limited. They didn't fully understand bacteria. They didn't know how infections spread. Surgical tools were often reused without sterilization. Today, that sounds horrifying, but at the time, they believed they were doing everything possible. Amputation became one of the most common operations of the war, not because surgeons wanted to remove limbs, but because it was often the only chance to save a patient's life. Sometimes it worked. Many times it didn't. Imagine hearing the surgeon say, "We have one chance," and knowing that chance meant losing an arm or a leg. For thousands of soldiers, that decision came within minutes. The battlefield ended. The struggle to survive had only begun. And even after the guns fell silent, the Civil War refused to disappear. In fact, one connection to that war lasted into the 21st century. Chapter 4. The pension that lasted until 2020. Here's a question. When do you think the Civil War truly ended? 1865. Not exactly. Believe it or not, one Civil War pension was still being paid. In 2020, how is that possible? The answer sounds unbelievable. A Civil War veteran named Mose Triplett fought during the war. Years later, at an advanced age, he became a father. His daughter, Irene Triplett, qualified for a veteran survivor pension because of lifelong disabilities. Every month, the U.S. government continued sending payments, not for World War II, not for World War I, for the Civil War. When Irene passed away in 2020, a direct financial connection to America's bloodiest conflict finally came to an end. Think about what that means. The war ended in 1865, yet its effects reached into a world of smartphones, streaming services, and social media. History isn't always as distant as we imagine. Sometimes, it quietly lives beside us. But while America struggled to heal, something even more shocking was unfolding. Inside the nation's capital, the Civil War was over. General Robert E. Lee had surrendered. The country believed peace had finally arrived. Then, everything changed. Chapter 5. The night that changed America forever. April 14th, 1865. President Abraham Lincoln decided to spend a relaxing evening at the theater. The Civil War was coming to an end. Across the country, people believed the hardest days were finally over. No one expected that one evening would become one of the most unforgettable moments in American history. Inside Ford's Theater, a well-known actor quietly made his way through the building. He already knew exactly where the president would be sitting. Just moments later, everything changed. The entire audience was left in shock. But here's something many people never learn. President Lincoln was not the only important leader connected to that night's events. There was a much larger plan unfolding. Elsewhere in Washington, another government leader faced a dangerous situation at his home. Against all odds, but he survived. Historians believe a metal brace he was wearing because of a recent carriage accident played an unexpected role in protecting him. Sometimes, the smallest details can change history. At the same time, another person had been expected to approach Vice President Andrew Johnson. The opportunity was there. Everything appeared to be in place, but the plan was never carried out. That single decision changed the future of the United States. Imagine how different history might have looked if every part of that plan had unfolded. The country's top leaders could have disappeared from office at the same time. After 4 exhausting years of civil war, America was already facing enormous challenges. Fortunately, the nation continued moving forward, but the Civil War left behind another mystery, one that still sparks debate today, because the real story of Abraham Lincoln is far more complex than most people realize. Chapter 6. The real Abraham Lincoln. Ask almost anyone, who was America's greatest president? One name usually comes first: Abraham Lincoln, the man who saved the Union, the great emancipator, the hero. But the real Lincoln was more complicated, and that's exactly what makes his story so remarkable. When the Civil War began, Lincoln's #1 goal was not ending slavery. It was saving the United States. He believed if the Union fell apart, the American experiment might never survive. In fact, early in the war, Lincoln publicly admitted something surprising. If preserving the Union meant freeing every enslaved person, he would do it. If preserving the Union meant freeing only some, he would do that too. And if saving the nation required freeing none, he said he would consider that as well. To modern ears, those words sound shocking. But history rarely moves in straight lines. People change, leaders grow, and Lincoln did exactly that. As the war continued, he witnessed unimaginable suffering. He met formerly enslaved families. He listened to abolitionists. He spoke with one of the greatest voices of the 19th century, Frederick Douglass. Those conversations changed him. Lincoln slowly came to believe that preserving the Union and ending slavery could no longer be separated. On January 1st, 1863, he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. It didn't immediately free every enslaved person, but it transformed the Civil War. Now, the fight wasn't only about saving the nation. It became a fight for freedom itself. Near the end of his life, Lincoln pushed Congress to pass the 13th Amendment, making the abolition of slavery permanent. He never lived to see the country rebuilt. 5 days after Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered, Lincoln was assassinated. You'll never know what America might have looked like if he had lived. But one thing is certain: the man who entered the White House in 1861 was not the same man who left it in 1865. Chapter 7. The Army history almost forgot. Here's a question. Who helped win the Civil War, but was ignored for generations? The answer: nearly 200,000 black soldiers. After the Emancipation Proclamation, thousands of African Americans volunteered to fight for the Union. Many had escaped slavery only months earlier. Others had been born free. All understood exactly what was at stake. These soldiers became known as the United States Colored Troops, the USCT. They fought in more than 400 battles. They stormed enemy positions, defended forts, protected supply lines, and proved again and again that courage has no color. But they faced a terrifying reality. If white Union soldiers were captured, they usually became prisoners of war. If black Union soldiers were captured, many faced execution or were forced back into slavery. They knew the risk. They fought anyway. One story became legendary. A soldier named William Carney carried the American flag during the assault on Fort Wagner. Bullets tore through the battlefield. One struck him, then another, and another. Even wounded, he refused to let the flag touch the ground. When he finally reached safety, his first words were unforgettable. The old flag never touched the ground. Years later, he became the first African American to receive the Medal of Honor. His bravery inspired generations. Yet for decades, stories like his received little attention. Without the courage of black soldiers, many historians believe, the Union's victory would have been far more difficult. Their service didn't simply help save the nation. It helped redefine who that nation belonged to. Chapter 8. The Women Who Went to War. Now, here's a story few Americans ever hear. Women fought in the Civil War, not only as nurses, not only as cooks, but as soldiers. Because women weren't officially allowed to enlist, some made an extraordinary decision. They disguised themselves as men. They cut their hair, changed their names, wrapped their bodies beneath military uniforms, then quietly joined the army. Side by side with thousands of men, historians estimate hundreds of women fought this way. Some survived the entire war without anyone discovering their secret. Others were only identified after being wounded in battle or after their deaths. Imagine carrying that burden, fighting every day, hiding your identity, knowing that discovery could end everything. Not all women served with weapons. Thousands became nurses, spies, messengers, hospital workers. Some crossed enemy lines carrying intelligence. Others cared for wounded soldiers, day and night, with almost no medical supplies. Many died from disease, just as the soldiers did. Their courage rarely appeared in history books. But without them, the Civil War changed America forever. As the nation began rebuilding, another mystery quietly captured people's imagination. As the Confederacy came to an end, a train carrying a fortune disappeared. More than 160 years later, its destination remains unknown. Chapter 9. The Lost Confederate Treasure Spring, 1865. The Confederacy was reaching its final days. Its capital, Richmond, Virginia, was being abandoned. Government officials left. Military leaders moved south. The conflict was ending. Before leaving, the Confederate treasury gathered its remaining valuables: gold, silver jewelry, cash, a fortune worth millions at the time. The goal was simple: keep the treasury from being captured. The train traveled south, through the Carolinas, toward Georgia. People later tried to trace its journey. Then, the trail suddenly disappeared. The treasure was never officially accounted for. Over the years, many ideas have been suggested. Some believe it was hidden in secret. Others think it was quietly divided among officials. Another theory suggests it left the country to support future plans. For generations, researchers and explorers have searched old forests, historic properties, riverbanks, and forgotten railway routes. Every few years, someone believes they've solved the mystery. So far, no discovery has been fully confirmed. Even today, no one knows exactly what became of the missing Confederate treasury. It remains one of America's greatest historical mysteries. But while people searched for lost riches, the nation was focused on something even more important: its future. Chapter 10, a new beginning and new challenges. The long conflict had finally ended. Slavery was abolished. Millions of Americans began a new chapter of life. For the first time, the Constitution expanded important rights. The 13th Amendment ended slavery. The 14th Amendment recognized citizenship. The 15th Amendment protected voting rights for black men. It felt like the beginning of a new era. Across the South, families searched for loved ones they had not seen for years. New schools opened. Churches welcomed growing communities. Neighborhoods slowly rebuilt. Black Americans began serving in public office. Some even represented their states in Congress. For a brief time, a more equal future seemed within reach. But progress was not always easy as Reconstruction continued. Many communities faced serious challenges. Fear and uncertainty returned to many areas. People struggled over the future of the country. Then, in 1877, federal troops left the South. Many of the changes introduced during Reconstruction gradually came to an end. New laws limited opportunities for many citizens. Separation between communities became more common. The journey toward equal rights was far from finished. In many ways, the Civil War ended one chapter, but the effort to build a fairer nation continued for generations. Many people believe that conversation continues, even today. Conclusion: the war that still shapes America. More than 160 years have passed since the Civil War began, yet its influence can still be seen. Discussions about freedom, equality, states' rights, citizenship, and the Constitution often lead back to those remarkable years. The Civil War changed more than maps. It changed families, communities, and the future of the United States. Hundreds of thousands of Americans never returned home. Some historians believe the total was even greater. Many were never identified. Many families never learned exactly where their loved ones rested. Their stories became part of American history. Their sacrifices helped shape the nation that followed. History is not only about dates, or famous leaders, or important events. History is about ordinary people facing extraordinary moments. Some became unforgettable heroes. Some made decisions that history still debates. Most were simply trying to build a better future. That is why the Civil War still matters, not only because of what happened, but because of the questions it leaves behind. What does freedom truly mean? How can a nation recover after deep division? How do people create a stronger future together? Those questions did not disappear in 1865. They continue to inspire discussion today. Perhaps that is why the Civil War remains one of the most important and most fascinating stories in American history. If today's documentary gave you a new perspective on the Civil War, tell us in the comments. Which moment surprised you the most? If you enjoy discovering the hidden stories behind American history, subscribe to Hidden America TV, because some of history's greatest stories are the ones waiting to be rediscovered. Until next time, stay curious.